Hello and welcome everyone. Today well, first of all, let me say thank you for joining me on this third segment of On This Wood Table. Today, we will be taking an in-depth look and analysis of the internal workings that make up the Mk2 Browning Hi-Power. For consistency, I will not make any mention of the Mk1, the Mk3, or the new FN Hi-Power, as I also just do not have any experience with those. So, before we begin, I will be removing the slide and also these grip panels so we can get a better look at the internals. We'll be right back. Alright, and now we can begin. So, here we have our frame. You could definitely get a better look at the insides of it, and it might even look a bit familiar to you. Now, if we just start from the very beginning of the pipeline here, we have our trigger. And behind that trigger, there is a bit of a semicircle cut, you could say, that accommodates the base of this trigger bar. This trigger bar is very important. Moving down from that, our next step is this sear lever. This sear lever acts as sort of a seesaw, so in its current resting position, you can imagine that it is sort of like this. And then, when it gets in contact by the trigger bar, it moves like this, in this motion. We have our sear right here, this L-shaped piece right here is the sear. What gives the sear its return to, or its reset, is the sear spring, which rides along the back part of the grip here. And behind the sear spring, we have our hammer strut, responsible for holding the hammer. What gives the hammer its power is this, what do you call it? The hammer spring, excuse me, hammer spring. We have here our safety levers and our hammer right here. And these are just our guide rails. And this is the ejector. So, if we take everything step by step, one by one, right? When we press the trigger bar gets pushed upwards. The trigger bar then makes contact with the front part of this sear lever. Now, once it does that, it pushes that inwards, or upwards rather, and the rear side of that sear lever comes downwards. Now, if you see that the end of the sear, it has a bit of a small block right there. That small block makes contact with this part of the sear. So what happens is that that sear lever pushes down on the sear, lifting this part of the sear upwards, releasing the hammer. Like so, I will pretend as if my thumb here was the sear lever pressing downwards, right there. So if I would do that, you could see that it raises. And if it raises, it lets go of the hammer, like so. Another thing you might notice, which is actually an additional safety feature for this Hi-Power, is that if you notice, it has a couple of teeth here. And there is our secondary tooth. Or could also be called the half-cock tooth. Should something happen, should something impact the hammer, or the hammer, for whatever reason, tries to fall and make contact with the firing pin without you depressing the trigger, that secondary tooth is meant to be like a emergency stop, if you will. Right, to stop it. It's like its last resort sort of thing. And then if we pull further back, you can see the sear about to engage on the primary tooth. Oh, right there. Right here. It is important that you keep the teeth of your hammer nice and straight so that it is able to mate with the sear seamlessly, essentially. You don't want to have any missing material because that actually could affect your trigger pull. And depending on how bad it is, it could affect the safety. Because you don't want your hammer to just be slipping or prematurely slipping. Just make sure that this is nice and straight and clean. Now, if we actually take a look at how the safety mechanism works, it's actually not too complicated. If you can see right there, if you can see that half moon shape cut right there, I'm going to try to point at it, but it's right here. That is essentially the safety lever, because see what happens when I engage it. It has moved right behind the sear. And because it has moved right behind the sear is not able to let go of the hammer. Now, if we remember, pressing down on this part of the sear releases the hammer, right? Let's see what happens when I try that with the safety engaged. It does not work. Sorry about that, my cam overheated. Anyway, what I was trying to say is, now with the safety engaged, that part right there has moved right behind the sear. So it's essentially like a stone wall. There is no way that that sear is going to be able to be pressed while it's being blocked by that piece right there. I don't think that there's anything else much to discuss here. I feel like the Hi-Power is just, it's very basic. Once you really just get to see everything, it's not very complicated, and that's something that I really enjoy about the Hi-Power. John Browning just really knew what he was doing when he was making this. Even though he didn't finalize the design, I'm still just a big fan of how easily I can understand it, and I have taken this apart down to just the bare frame, and I have put every single thing back together, and it's pretty easy. I think the parts that can be a pain, if you would need to, is replacing this hammer spring. Luckily, I haven't had to do that. The last time I tried, I lost the hammer spring, so I had to get a whole new strut assembly. That was my fault. Another thing is when I'm assembling this entire rear part, which is being held in by this pin, to get all this to just line up while also holding this hammer back. Huge pain in the ass, but not the worst thing that I've had to deal with. Spring is also not too bad either. The spring not the spring, the trigger, sorry. The trigger is actually pretty easy to put back in there with this trigger bar. That's not too complicated. Now, to go over a safety that I did not mention, if you remember earlier, you might have seen this little hole right there. My high-power enthusiasts pretty much caught this since the very beginning, but this pinhole here is meant for a pin, right, to hold a safety plunger of some sort that would make the magazine safety. Now, what is a magazine safety? A magazine safety is this little annoying thing where even if you had a round in the chamber, hammer is back, safety disengaged, but there is no magazine present in the mag well, right? You would not be able to fire it. That safety plunger back here would be blocking the trigger from able to raise the trigger bar unless the safety plunger is pushed in by the pressure of the magazine. Then you would be able to freely manipulate that trigger along with the trigger bar. That trigger bar then engages the sear lever, as we have discussed before. With all that being said, nope, there's that one. Okay. I really suck at this. I suck at this more than I think. That is so bizarre. Like, I'm hitting something, right? It's just not this. That one is actually better. Okay. Yeah. Tree. I wholeheartedly believe that to anyone who plans on carrying, is going to carry, or even currently carries, that you familiarize yourself with your platform. Get to know the ins and outs of it. Get to know the internal mechanism. Build confidence in your equipment. Actually go out there and test your things. Understand what you can do and what you can't do. Can't do, right? Actually go out there and test things yourself, and just don't go off of the opinions of other people, especially the people that are at the top of the tower that just don't even care and say that everything's okay, and that they even gaslight you, and next thing you know, you end up being the next person with the round in their leg because they didn't know any better. Actually, not even just that, you know, the company that they put their trust into just fails them. Honestly, kind of a sad thing that's going on around these days. Another thing Something that I usually hear a lot is people that say things like, oh, I love my this or that. I've never had any problems with this or that. You know, sure. And if that's a genuine thing that you can say about your stuff, then that's great. Congratulations, you know. But usually, and I'm not saying all of them, but there's people that just say that and they only shot like 50 rounds or something. Which comes to my next point of, yes, of course it's not going to have any failures if you just don't even shoot it. Today's video is for the sole purpose of education. And I hope you're all having a great day, a great week, and a great year, even. It's really hot out here. I just had a ghillie suit on with a parka and these winter pants, so I feel like I'm dying out here, but the trees don't make it so bad. Anyway, that is my conclusion for now. I hope you're all having a great day. Oh, I already said that. Alright, until next time.